Hi everyone, I'm Joe. Today it's time for me to do a book review of Unseen Academicals, written by Terry Pratchett. This is a fantasy novel first published in 2009. It is the 38th Discworld novel of 41 in total, so it's a very late Discworld novel, and it is not officially part of any of the existing character subsets, although some people might say that it is part of the Rincewind character series because it does feature him, but I don't class it as that because Rincewind only has literally a couple of sentences of dialogue and only appears about twice in the novel for a matter of minutes, so it's really not that. It is, however, an book novel, and it is focused around the Wizards of the Unseen University, hence the title. And in this is focused around the city of Ankh-Morpork, which is essentially Terry Pratchett taking all of these stereotypes of London, England, twisting and turning them, amplifying them, and frankly enjoying himself immensely by making them very silly and making often quite interesting and truly worthwhile points about them as well. So in Ankh-Morpork you have the game of football that exists, same as real life. However, football, as the start of the novel, is not like our beautiful game as it is in our world. It is very rough and street level. There's no real rules. It's frankly undertaken by gangs, or and if not gangs, then it's considered a sort of the sport of the rough and ready sort of common man, which obviously the upper class idiots, often, or snobs, if you would like to say, they aren't keen on it, let's say. So this presents a problem when, for political reasons essentially, and also financial ones, the Unseen University staff, led by Arch-Chancellor Ridcully, gets essentially forced into playing a game of football with one of the major street teams. However, they don't take this lying down, however, because whilst they may have to play a game of football, which they're not exactly used to because they are university lecturers, and ones that prefer to not actually lecture and just eat all the big meals, obviously using stereotypes there, they decide to try and sway things in their favour. So they start to try and basically evolve the game of football and bring in rules. Obviously the offside rule and other rules start to try to be introduced in their own very specialised Discworld fashion, and this leads to a sort of evolution of sport, and more importantly an evolution of what people think of the game and of that particular class. It's an interesting conversation and one held by interesting characters, and there is also a series of other interesting characters that go along with this. Of course, the librarian of the university, who happens to be an orangutan, magical accident long time ago. He's of course the goalkeeper because having a large orangutan as a goalkeeper in football obviously makes perfect sense. I mean, he's certainly enthusiastic, and you've also got a few other interesting characters like a certain Mr. Nut, who is unique to this book, and he's a strange character because nobody really knows anything about him, including Mr. Nut. He doesn't even know who he is or what he is. He just works at the university in this lowly role, stoking boilers and such in the basement levels, and nobody really knows too much about him. So he's been involved as well. There are several other characters. There is also a young man who is very good at kicking a tin can around, which this is a novel about football, so that blatantly comes into play. That's no spoiler, by the way. I mean, it's obvious, a book about football, and then there's a young man who happens to be kicking a tin can around. Rather, well, pretty much obvious really what's going to happen there. And there's also a young woman that is described as beautiful but dim, and she is getting involved in the fashion model business run by Dwarf. So there's a little bit of a revolution going on there. And overall, it's a time of, sort of, I wouldn't say complete change, but certainly things are evolving somewhat in the city and in the culture around Ankh-Morpork, and everybody involved is trying to learn and adapt to this and, become more than they are. And that is to do for one part with the character. As always, Pratchett does an amazing job with describing the characters and getting them to fit into the world that he's created. They're all fun and enjoyable characters to read about. They've all got really interesting psychologies and motivations behind them. They're not just there to fill up space on a page. They're all there for a real reason, and they interact and really work together well. You've got obviously all the wizards, who are fairly well developed by this point, who are really interesting. You've got Mr. Nut, who is a slightly unknown factor, which obviously Pratchett always has a couple of characters that are new to each individual book for that effect. And you've got a few other sort of semi-recurring characters, like the Patrician, Lord of Veterinary, who is the ruler of the city. He is a very curious figure because he's a Machiavellian figure. This thin face with like this very well-defined beard and a moustache. And if you want to Google Havelock Veterinary, by all means go ahead. There's some brilliant artwork of him because he's just a very iconic figure within the Discworld and indeed within Ankh-Morpork, and he doesn't stand nonsense, and he's got a very special mind, and he knows how to influence and frankly manipulate people into doing what he hopes they'll do, and he's very, very good at it. And this novel is yet another one, especially in the later novel, where it's him manipulating other people into doing something more than they would. And this is about the change of football being about in the city. And indeed the city is what I'll talk about next, because this is focused entirely around Ankh-Morpork, which is Discworld London, as I've said. However, this is a slightly different look to it than normal, because at this point about half of the Discworld novels, maybe, I haven't actually counted, but it's roughly that, are set in the city of Ankh-Morpork. So by this point you should know what to expect with the city, and indeed you do, but this is a very street level version of the city, because you've got people playing football in the streets, literally, and you've got the wizards are going out trying to play a game of football which they're not used to. You've got normal civilians on the street as well, and all these interactions make the city feel different from what you're used to. And I thought I was used to the Discworld by now, and indeed specifically Ankh-Morpork, and yet Pratchett, as always, manages to get you to view and think about somewhere differently, even though you've read about it by this point more than a dozen times. You think, oh yeah, it's Ankh-Morpork again, this familiar city, and that is true, but there's more to it than that. Indeed, that's true with everything that Pratchett does. You think that after a few books you know what he's going to do, and you know the turn he'll take, and he never quite manages. He always manages to do some odd little off take somewhere, or offshoot, which is really enjoyable and really fun, and frankly really works in his favour. And the location in this, being Ankh-Morpork, works again with the characters and the plot to really bring everything alive, and it brings it alive to make some rather interesting points in the novel as well, as far as ideas and themes that are concerned. One of these is of course on society, and specifically, as you can gather from what I've said, one of the obvious ideas or themes is rich versus poor, or basically the lower class versus upper class, because you've got the unseen university wizards, who are obviously upper class, but their money and most of their budget is being held in a trust fund, and it stipulates that if they don't essentially take part in certain events held by the common man, that their trust fund will stop. And they kind of need the trust fund to continue because they don't really make much money otherwise, so they kind of have to play this game of football. Hence the motivation and indeed the trigger for the book. And it's an interesting situation and an interesting topic because they talk about it from the point of view of the wizards, who are obviously the haves, the people in the street who are mostly have-nots. But Pratchett doesn't just leave it that black and white, he mixes it. You've got people that are halfway, and indeed more than halfway and less than halfway. You've got people amongst the whole spectrum. Some people have a lot, some people have a very little, some people have a small amount but not too much, and they know how to get more. So you've got all this toing and going between characters who want more. Some characters actually have a lot and don't want as much, and obviously the people that don't have as much would quite happily take it off them. So it's finding that balance of people that want more out of life, people that actually want to reduce their life, reduce the complexity of their life, and the society that can create. It's also about society and about how a society can change based on just small everyday things, and something like a game of football, or using that as an analogy for any kind of sporting event or public event. A public event can change a society in innumerable and significant ways without the people that are part of society realising it, because you might not think that it's actually having a major effect, but actually by hosting and running a series of public events like obviously football matches on a regular basis, that forces society and the people to think differently. And obviously you have to organise, you have to plan, you have to cater for these events. These all require some serious thought and preparation and cooperation, and it forces society, rather than just being individuals, you actually got to make them, force them into an actual cohesive working society that works together for the enjoyment of others. Basically the whole idea of the whole is greater than the sum of its part. I've actually managed to get that saying right for a change. I normally miss like that. With this, that really is not more important, but it's certainly significant, and for that this book is actually quite important, because the other major thing that it talks about is, as you can tell from what I've said, is the idea of a public event like sport. It creates a unifying effect on us, because obviously, as I said, people have to work together to have these events happen. They can't happen by just one or two individuals. You need a large group with different skill sets, different positions in society. You need the rich and you need the poor for football matches to take place in the Discord as in real life. And it's about what that can achieve, let's say, about that ability to bring together people from different groups, disparate groups, and create something different. It manipulates society without society being aware of it, and creates something more, something greater, which I think is something that is important, and Pratchett makes a very good job of discussing in this book, and one that I think some people, I know that this book, Unseen Academicals, is not considered one of the best books because it might seem lighter. I personally would disagree with that. I would say it's just as good as any other. I mean, I hold almost all Discord novels in pretty much equal regard in that way, because it discusses, as always, important points based around great characters with a good plot and in a fun location. So overall, I would indeed heavily recommend this novel, and I would heavily recommend anything by Pratchett, and indeed anything in the Discord in particular. And with that said, that is it for this review. So if you have read Unseen Academicals, or you would like to, then please leave a comment and we can have a talk about it. If you'd like to know more about it, then again leave a comment and I'll try to answer to the best of my ability. If you've read any other Discworld book and you want to talk about it, then again leave a comment and such. And with that said, that is it. So a comment to the book on Goodreads can be found in the description box below, as always, as well as all my social medias. And with that said, that is it for this video. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you another day. Bye for now.